Around.
You have quorum.
Okay, perfect. It is 7:01, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. I want to remind everyone that we have two meetings tonight, and this is the first of two. We're having our, I want to make sure I've got it right. Our Library Bond Committee meeting starting now. Cassie, can you take roll?
Yes, I have Chair Wendy.
I am here.
Vice Chair Magana,
Present.
Commissioner Scissor. He's switching over. I'll call him again.
Present.
Okay. Commissioner Westphal,
Present.
Commissioner Reyes, Commissioner Thorson,
Present.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Present.
Commissioner Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Jolly, Commissioner Ramos,
Present.
Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Allen.
Here.
We have quorum.
All right, thank you, everyone, and welcome. Do we have any public record that needs to be read in? Nope. All right, thank you.
No.
Do we have any visitors? If we do, we have an open forum and members of the public can speak on items that are not on the calendar or not on the agenda for 2 minutes. Do we have anyone wishing to do so that is not a commissioner and is a guest?
Well, I will note that our brand new council member and commission liaison, council member Torres, is listed as an attendee here. So I'm going to promote him to panelist. He's also raising his hand. So council member, you're of course welcome to speak. And we also have a place for you on the agenda. So up to you on when you want to do that. But we'll allow you to talk and then I'll promote you to panelist once we get that sorted out.
Oh, hi. Hello, everybody. I can definitely wait. So wherever I am in the agenda, I can wait. This is my first time here.
Welcome.
We're so excited. So I'll
everybody.
promote you to panelist. Okay. Thank you,
Great.
council member.
Thank you.
All
And
right,
just
we're gonna.
Sorry, just a heads up that I actually did take that section off of the agenda because I wasn't too sure if they were going to be attending. But they typically speak right before Commissioner Wendy gives her portion of the meeting.
And in this one, I'll defer and let our council member speak in my spot. Okay. And we're really glad to have you. Thank you, Councilmember Torres. All right, we are going to keep moving right along. We have the consent calendar. I want to remind people you can vote even if you weren't here last year for this, as long as you read the minutes. So I need a approval of the January 18th agenda for today. And I need a part of the consent calendar is approving the minutes from November 17th, 2021. Can I have somebody make the motion?
This is Angelica. I move.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Vice Chair Magana, second.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone who would like to say no to our consent calendar? And is there anyone who needs to abstain? Great, passes. Moving right along. We're moving into our discussion and action item. This isn't the action item of this meeting. If there's anyone that wants to speak, wait a minute, I'm catching up to you, Cassie. There we go. Okay. We are going to be listening with great attention because this is one of our favorite reports, but it's the annual library bond oversight review. I see our financial auditors are here. I see Andrea is here. So I'm going to hand it over to the functional experts on our bond to give us a report, and then we'll take action.
Hi, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Andrea Maestra, the Library Department's Administrative Officer. And with us today, we have Eric Lemon from the Finance Department. We also have some representatives from our external auditor, which is Messias Genie, with us today. I think that is everyone I see on the list of attendees. So if I missed somebody, please forgive me. So this item is to cover the annual audit, which is conducted annually for this period is for period ending June 30, 2022. And our external auditor, as I had stated, is Macias Genie. And they completed the audit, and the audit report, as well as a memo, is included in the agenda packet. So this will just be a brief PowerPoint presentation with an overview of what is covered in the audit and just some general information about expenses that occurred during the fiscal year. Next slide, please. So what is your role as the oversight committee for this library bond audit? And basically to understand the allowable cost, review expenditures for compliance with ballot language, review and approve outside audit of expenditures. So the external auditor does take a sampling of transactions throughout the fiscal year and audits those specific transactions to ensure compliance. They look for material weaknesses, they look for internal controls. And so there's a variety of things they look for. And so that is what the audit report is based off of. And so during this period, I believe there were 14 transactions that were pulled and reviewed. And next slide, please. So just a little background about the bond, the actual branch library bond fund. So in November 2000, Measure O was approved, and there was a general obligation bond that was issued. This funding is restricted for the purchase of property, construction, improvement to libraries. About 2 years ago, there was an update that included no additional capital project management staff could be charged to the bond fund. And then prior to that, there were some capital project management staff charges. So that is something that changed in 2019, 2020. In addition, there's no administration staffing that can be charged to the bond fund. And so the allowable costs to include the very specific project cost, and staff that are specifically working on supporting that project. For example, maybe there's an electrician or a specific trade that would support that project. And so there's no administration or staffing such as my position or any of the budget or analytical staff can be supported or funded by the bond fund. Next slide, please. So now is just a brief overview of our expenditures for this period that's being audited. So the one thing I want to make note of is we do have about $5.9 million that we're going to be spending down in the upcoming years. The reason why the expenses are so low is a couple of reasons. One, of course, there was the COVID pandemic and there was a lot of strain and lack of resources, or I shouldn't say lack of resources, a lot of need, a high need throughout the city for our public works team to support a lot of project work. As you all recall, there was Measure T that was issued just a couple of years ago. And so there's a lot of spend down of those funds that's happening as well. And then in addition to that, the library had a bigger kind of campaign that we're working on in terms of applying for the state infrastructure grant funding. And so we were trying to really maximize the use of the remaining bond funds to support some of those projects. And so in this period, we had a little over $210,000 that we spent, which we did do some security cameras at Berryessa and Vineland. And so it included also security system updates. Some facility improvements that were completed were the West Valley boiler, Almaden HVAC chiller, and Bascom PA system replacement. And so in summary, those were the projects that were completed in 21-22. Next slide, please. So the audit basis is looking at the financial records, looking at justification and backup documentation related to project management costs, perhaps some of the contracts, if they were valid payments, are the invoices and supporting documentations, matching the actual expenditures, making sure that any agreements that may be expired or no longer valid are liquidated, making sure that whatever charges that are staff charges are direct charge staff and not other staff that are considered administration or not allowable. There's also a look at internal controls. And so when we think about the financial records, the justification and backup documentation and all of that, There is another area, the internal controls, which is looking at any material weaknesses over internal controls. So during this period, there was a there was a material weakness identified in the internal control of the financial reporting. So the audit report will specifically say it, as well as the memo. And basically, during this period, the external auditor identified a material weakness in which there were two non-payroll expenditures that charged what's a 25% overhead charge, which was the total of $76,000 to the bond fund. Now, those expenses were not reimbursed with bond funds, so there was no questionable uses of bond proceeds and no notes of non-compliance. So for this process, one of the items that was identified to help support this not happening was to include training of all the staff that is processing expenditures to this fund. And so there are a variety of departments that do support projects. And so there's departments such as the library or public works that might be charging expenditures to the library's bond fund. And so there were no audit findings, but there was a material weakness that was identified. But as I said, the bond funds did not reimburse that expense. And so it was not considered non-compliant during the bond audit process. Next slide, please. And that is it. That's it. More information is in the memo, as well as the audit that's linked on the agenda. And if there's any questions, I'm available, as well as our city auditor. I am so sorry. I totally forgot to mention that he is here as well. And so he's here, our external auditor, as well as Eric from the finance department, to answer any questions.
Thank you, Andrea. As usual, you keep us completely in the know and to the point, efficient. I love it. Okay, so I'm going to, it looks like, see if there's any comment besides our own commissioners. I'll get to you, but just to make sure if there's any other comments for public that is attending, although I don't think we have any besides a council member, although he's really not public. He's a part of our commission.
So we have 2 attendees, but neither have their hand raised.
All right, then moving on, commissioners. I see Commissioner Kelly.
Yes, thank you for that presentation. Very informative. My question is on that subject, but a little bit different. To whom do we speak about the product of that? For example, the PA system at Bascom and the reader board at Bascom, questions like that would come under construction.
Can you clarify when you're saying who do you speak with? Are you talking about that specific project, or just in general about projects that might be in process through the library?
Those specific projects, I'd like to know more about the PA system and about the reader board repair, if it comes under those funds.
It does, yeah. We can definitely, myself and Tran, our facilities and security program manager, can definitely help support you with any questions that you might have.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners with questions or comments? All right, thank you very, very much. So we're needing to move that we approve the draft memorandum. Can I have somebody make the motion?
So moved, Commissioner Allen.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen. Can I have a second?
I second Commissioner Westfall.
Thank you, Commissioner Westfall. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? All right, it passes and moves right along. Let's see, now we are going between notes, so let's see, here we go. I am looking at, before we go to adjournment, did we want to let Councilmember Torres go in now, or do we want to wait till the next meeting, not our bond meeting?
Let's just
It
take
would
it
be
under-
appropriate to do the full meeting. Sorry, Anne.
I can wait.
All right,
Which
Then-
we will get to in just a second.
All right, we will move right along then. The meeting schedule for next year's meeting will be November 15th, 2023 at 7 p.m. I call this meeting adjourned at 7:16 p.m. Moving on to our other and the one we consistently have, Library and Education Commission meeting. Let's go ahead and call it to order at 7:17. And Cassie, can you take the roll? I know, I see there we go.
Sorry, it wasn't getting to the
I saw that.
unmute.
I didn't want to
Okay,
catch up.
so Chair Wendy,
I'm here, thanks.
Vice Chair Magana,
Present.
Commissioner Souza,
Present.
Commissioner Westfall,
Present.
Commissioner Reyes, Commissioner Thorson,
Present.
Commissioner Mendoza,
Present.
Commissioner Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Jolly, Commissioner Ramos,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Present.
Commissioner Allen,
Here.
and we have a quorum.
Great, thank you all for joining us again. We are going to move into the consent calendar. We're going to approve today's agenda and the minutes from our regular meeting, November 16th, 2022. As a reminder, you can vote on this even if you were not in attendance on the 16th, but you've read the notes and answered all your questions. So can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen.
Allen.
Thank you so much. And all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And anyone needing to abstain? All right, moving right along. Is there any public record, Cassie, that needs to be read in?
We do not have any public record.
Thank you. Of the folks that are here, is there anyone who'd like to make public comment on items that are not on the agenda? If you would like to do that, please raise your hand and you'll have 2 minutes. I'm looking around the board and it looks like no, unless anyone else sees someone. Okay, moving on. We are in discussion and action. We have 3 information items tonight. The first is our Youth Commission announcements, some of our favorite parts. So we're really excited to have our Youth Commissioner, Gordon Chen, here to give us a report.
Hi everyone, it's been quite a while, but I'm sure you guys all missed me and I'm back now. So we took last month off, but in that month, we still had our annual winter retreat. And in that retreat, we sort of scoped out what this year is going to look like. And we set a date and time for our annual budget summit, which seeks to basically include more youth in discussion of our city's finances and hopefully informs them a bit more about the relevant funding for each of our city's major departments. And the month before December, in November, that was our last general meeting. In that meeting, we discussed a policy proposal that would give city workers 3 weeks of paid leave, and also voted on a number of projects such as a winter clothing drive, as well as a food drive. And coming up, as I just said, we have our budget summit is planned for Sunday, February 26th from 1 to 3 p.m. at King Library. I'm very excited for that. And yeah, that is essentially all we have for now. We have our next general meeting sometime soon, and we hope to be able to wrap up our current projects as well as work on some new initiatives. So yep, that is it for me.
Thank you. Is there anyone who'd like to make public comment? And any commissioners that would like to make comment? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate seeing you all the time, and we did miss you. So thanks for the update. We are going to move on to library budget review with Andrea again giving us her expertise around our budget review.
Hi, good evening. Library and Education Commissioner, all the commissioners. So happy today to provide a brief budget update. So annually in January, we do typically provide throughout the year we do provide updates, but this one is really just kind of before we have submitted our budget proposals, before the commission budget message is heard, which is going to be in February agenda. And so we'll go into a little bit about our current budget, some of the proposals that were implemented this year, and then kind of what's on the forecast for next year in terms of the library's priority. Next slide, please. Just a little reminder, I'm sure we all have this memorized, the library's mission. San Jose Public Library enriches lives by fostering lifelong learning and by ensuring that every member of the community has access to a vast array of ideas and information. And so when thinking about the library's budget, our resources, how our resources are allocated and our priorities, this is definitely something that we remind ourselves of. Next slide, please. So in the current fiscal year, this is a snapshot of our department budget. So on the operating side, we have about $66 million, and our funding sources are general fund, library parcel tax. We have a small share of capital funds that funds positions. And we have our gift trust fund, which is any types of donations that are made to support projects or specific programs. Sometimes it is the friends groups that fund programs or specific branch needs. We also in the current year have American Rescue Plan funding, which is one-time federal funding. And then in general, our staff is about 78% of our operating budget. And so, when we think about the split of our budget and that the remaining amount is a really small portion that is supporting all of our non-personal costs, which includes our custodial supplies, all of our utilities. And so the largest chunk of our budget definitely is our staff. And then on the capital side, in the current year, we have $25.9 million, and our funding sources for our capital is our branch library bond fund, construction and conveyance tax, as well as we have a small portion of library parcel tax. Our 5-year CIP is $52.1 million. And this funding sources fund a variety of projects, improvements throughout the library facilities, our automation IT, as well as our acquisition of materials, which is all of our books and electronic resources. Anything that's accessible to the public is funded through this, this capital budget. Next slide, please. So when we think about our the current budget, a variety of budget actions were approved by City Council in June of 2022 for the 22-23 budget. And some of the ongoing budget actions that were included were annualizing our library hours for our lower resource communities, which was 13 branches. This included 16.2 FTE. We also received funding for additional security, which is 2 positions, one senior security supervisor and a senior security officer. It's important to note that this is a small addition to our small security staffing that supports all of our branches. The only location that they do not support is King. And so we have a total of 5.5 security. We also received approval to annualize our one community programs administrator that supports all of our equity, diversity, and inclusion. Of course, it's all throughout our the library, but this person leads those efforts. We received ongoing $500,000 to support our FFN program. And so that is really great. We also received approval of some staffing conversions and efficiencies to improve system-wide support throughout the library. Next slide, please. Some of the one-time budget actions that were approved were Sunday hours. And so the library was able to roll Sunday hours out to 16 locations. And so we're very excited and that's been going great. We also received a continuation of some one-time funding support the SJ Aspires program, device access and digital equity funding, childcare initiatives funding. The childcare initiative funding is one-time. All of these are one-time. And the SG Aspires Device Access Child Care Initiative funding, as well, are all American Rescue Plan funded programs. The last item is Californians Youth for Workforce Program. That is the continuation of our Resilience Corps program, and that is funded by a state grant. The initial funding source was ARP funding in the first year, and then this is the second year of the program, which is funded through a state grant. And it is an expanded program as well, I should know. Next slide, please. So before we get into the 23-24 budget kind of outlook, can we go back one slide? Sorry. I do want to make note that we did receive ongoing approval for ongoing budget actions as well as one-time budget actions, but it's important to note that we still have not restored all of our library branch hours to the pre-pandemic levels. And so our King Library is still at the reduced 73 hours a week, and it was previously pre-pandemic at 77. All of our branches previously were at 47 hours a week, and we still have a number of branches that are not fully restored to their pre-pandemic hours. And we also, of course, for many years have been trying to make an effort to move in the direction of fines free for all, as you know, many Bay Area cities have moved in that direction, and we are happy that council has approved fines free for all juvenile materials, but we really want to make that last effort to get to that over that hurdle to have fines free for everyone. And so we appreciate and value all of the ads that we received, but we also acknowledge that there's still work to be done. Next slide, please. So when we think about still work to be done, we're thinking about next fiscal year. So in December, late December, the city manager's budget direction memo was issued. And so part of that includes the city's economic outlook as well as budget direction for departments. And so although the city's revenues have rebounded, and in other areas where perhaps they haven't rebounded fully, there has been some significant improvement. They're looking at a future that would have 2 years of resources that are strained. And so part of what is contributing to that is the expectation that some of that growth will start to slow down in these 6 months, January through June. And then another part of that is included in the 22-23 budget is about $15 million of one-time ARP federal funding of programs. And some of those programs are obviously going to be looked at or reviewed or proposed by departments to continue either on a one-time or an ongoing basis. And so thinking about those types of situation, the general fund is continuing to be a little bit strained over the next 2 years. And so the direction from the city manager's office to departments was to look at reallocating general fund resources to achieve citywide and department priorities, look for any types of programs that you want to continue that were previously funded by one-time federal funds, and also try to address any specific city council direction or significant community organizational risk and one-time needs. The other indicator or, the other recommendation that was included was that proposed budget adds should also be offset with a equivalent department reduction. And so what that would mean is that as a department, we'd be making a decision that perhaps one program might need more resources than another, or be a higher priority than another program at this point in time, where the library is at in delivering services. Another process that is, I believe, our 3rd year in is the citywide budgeting for equity review process. And so that is part of the budget proposal process and budget submittal process. Every department will be completing a budgeting for equity review worksheet and submitting it along with all of our budget proposals. Next slide. So when we think about the budget direction, the city's economic outlook, and we also think about the one-time and ongoing ads that the library received this year, we start strategizing on what is the library department strategy, what is our proposal development, and our priorities. And so we know that library hours are definitely a priority for us to be able to get back to our pre-pandemic levels, as well as to annualize Sunday hours. And so that is a library priority. We are also looking to annualizing some of our one-time funded programs. And then we're also looking at fines free for all. We're also understanding that it is a priority to make sure that we're providing the necessary security at all of our locations for the community. We also are reviewing any vacancies to see if we can make any shifts or any staffing efficiencies that we can implement through this process. We have a priority of our SJ Access program delivery, looking at short-term as well as long-term goals of the program and needs of the community, as well as making sure that we're making the capital investments to ensure we have equipment, that our facilities are being upkept, and that we have the technology necessary to move forward. And so this is a general summary of our budget priorities and some of the strategies we're looking at when we're developing our proposals. Next slide, please. And then just a brief summary of the department annual budget process. So December through January, the budget direction memo is issued, as well as revenue projections are released by the city manager's office. And so included in that is, information about, will the general fund have a surplus, or is the direction that there's no additions that are going to be allowed, or is there a reduction that they're going to be asking departments to present? And so there was no reductions requested this year. There was a small surplus, but they knew that in the next 2 years that would definitely be strained. And so there was no huge adds being recommended at this time. And then during this time, we draft and submit our budget proposals based on the revenue scenarios, as well as the direction that was in the memo. We also engage with staff and communicate to the budget we communicate with staff on the budget standing and get feedback from staff to get their engagement, kind of see and if they have any ideas or proposals that they want to recommend. And so all of that happened. We actually start our process earlier than that. In about October, we start our internal department communication plan and process. And department proposals are due next Friday, which is January 27th. So we're still in the middle of that process. January through February, library meets with the city manager's budget office to determine final proposed budget to provide to the mayor. And then in February, the commission budget message will be reviewed here at the commission meeting. Next slide, please. So this is the bigger citywide process. And January 27th, all of our proposals are due to the budget office. March 6th, it is the mayor's March budget message. March 14th, there'll be the public hearing and finalize the city manager's proposed budget and capital improvement program. May 5th is when the proposed operating and capital, May 1st, excuse me, is when the release of the city manager's proposed operating and capital budgets will be issued. Throughout May, there will be a number of community budget meetings, public study sessions. There'll also be the public hearing at City Council, and then also City Council will City Council budget request process. So that is where City Council has the opportunity to issue budget documents and cost estimates to departments, and so those can get folded into the adopted budget at a later date. In June, we have the mayor's June budget message, final public hearing, as well as the budget approval and final budget adoption. So there's still a lot ahead of us, and we will be sharing the opportunities for commission to be engaged in any of these public meetings or study sessions as those schedules are finalized. And so we will definitely be sharing that out with everyone. Next slide, please. And that is it. So if anybody has any questions, I am available. And
Thank you, Andrea. As usual, very complicated, put out very efficiently and effectively and making lots of sense. I see we have this is the period where folks that are not yet commissioners can make public comment for 2 minutes on this agenda item. I see 3 hands raised, and I think maybe 2 are of the public. Cassie?
Yes, that's correct. We have 2 attendees. So Paul Soto, you can go.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. That was an excellent report. Excellent. Thank you for that. It was very thorough, very easy to understand, and it was semi-analytical. What I'd like to see from this commission, and this is not a request, this is actually an expectation. We're not moving with the cities. The people are going to drive what equity means. Okay, the city does not have a legally binding definition of what equity is. So it's going to be incumbent upon the public to drive what equity means. And I don't think there's anybody better qualified in this entire city to talk about equity than myself. Because in my life experience, being a Native American who is connected to the Mission San Diego, my ancestors built the Mission San Diego, and I am a Chicano who has a father that was raised in Salsipuedes, I don't know anybody better qualified to talk about equity and the inequity by which the Chicano community has specifically been treated with and continues to be treated with. Institutionalized racism looks like this. All those one-time funds that are ARP funds and all these programs, it looks all pretty on paper, doesn't it? They are one-time funds. They're slaps in the face because they don't want to make any policy with regard to those programs a part of the general fund. I want a list of all of those programs that were funded with one-time ARP funds to be itemized. Just that list. That's all I need. That's all I'm asking for is that list. Then we go from that list. I'll do the rest because I'll confront council with that list and show them how demeaning and disrespectful it is to say that they are complying with their equity principles and their equity definition, and they're only funding these programs with one-time funds. Look forward to it. You're going to be seeing me a lot at this particular meeting. Thank you.
All right, Cassie, our next speaker.
I believe it is Lillian. Please talk.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I unmuted just now.
Yes.
You know, I experienced going to the Berryessa Library today with their extended hours, and I really appreciate it. It's a great library. But I did hear you mention, and Martin Luther King's birthday was on Monday, that the King Library did not go back to pre-pandemic hours, that they were shortchanging their hours at that particular library. I believe that is what I heard. And I'm pretty sure that library is close to San Jose State, and there's a lot of students that use that library. So when you say there's 14 libraries that have extended hours, I just wondered why that glorious library has not extended its or has not gone on to implement additional hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to commissioners. I see Commissioner Kelly has his hand raised.
Take care of all the little details before I start. Thank you to the speakers. Very interesting comments. And thank you, Andrea, again. Always an amazing process that you provide. Under the capital budget, you said a word that's very close to my heart, and I would like to know more about it. And that's the Friends participation in the capital budget. What did you mean by that?
I was speaking on the operating side. I may have misspoke, but I meant the operating side for the gift trust fund. Many of the donations that we receive are from the Friends group for programming or any specific projects that we might be working on, made to either branches or programs.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. Commissioner Allen.
Thank you, Andrea, for that great report. Very understandable for a person like me whose math is not my top skill. I wanted to make sure, and I'm sure we're going to be pushing and including it in our Library Commission budget letter about restoring all branches to pre-pandemic hours and hopefully all branches to Sunday hours. And I'm also hoping that we are going to continue to push in that budget letter for fines free for all patrons of all libraries. Thank you. I know we will, but I just wanted to get it on record. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Thorson.
I had a question. I don't know if it's known yet, but is the library intending to request annualization of the Sunday hours at the current branches that have the Sunday hours, or is it going to be an ask for all branches to have the Sunday hours?
That is a great question. And actually the answer is, I think, yes, to everything. So, but in segments, the way that, as Andrea was talking about it, our first priority was to annualize the hours that we have now, which included both an add back for 13 branches and then Sunday hours, which we were able to extend to 16 branches. And then, so that's one piece. A second would be to get the full restoration for the remainder of all the branches. And then a third would be to add Sunday to all those remaining branches, and which I think also does include the Martin Luther King Jr. Library. We were able to add back most of the hours, but there, as Andrea mentioned, there's still 4 hours remaining for Martin Luther King. So those are, so we're preparing it in different segments, recognizing that we're going to start this process with the budget office and see where they're thinking.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Okay, I just want to add a few things. Of course, as usual, I will echo everyone who says every time you present, Andrea, we get it. And it makes a lot of sense. A couple things I know we're all talking about, and we all are very passionate about: restoration of hours, Sunday hours, fines free for all forever. And so I can say a couple things. One, I think I've said this before, but I was at high school graduations with our trustees for San Jose Unified, and Teresa Castellanos, Trustee Castellanos, had not been in a library for a long time, and she's a voracious book reader because of all the fines her kids got when they were growing up. So she now has she was so excited to hear about it, and she went in and got her, now she's there all the time. And I'm so happy I got to do that with her. The thing I think I'm worried about, and I'm wondering is, I was looking certainly at the Children's Bill of Rights and how much money is identified, spended that we are spending on children, 36 million. I worry about the vacancies and how we're going to talk about that in our budget letter and in our asks. So I'm wondering what staff is thinking about in regards to where are we with vacancies, and how much of a push are we going to add in our budget ask, our budget letters, and our budget advocacy.
And to clarify, you mean current staff vacancies?
Yeah.
And the impact to our services? That is a constant priority for us. You know, library has always prioritized filling vacancies, and Andrea and her team do a great job with that. Yes, you guys know, the libraries are wonderful buildings full of great resources, but what makes the library is the staff. And so we're very committed to keeping our positions filled. We actually don't have a really high vacancy rate. And it's funny, I was at a session today where everybody talking about retaining staff, and I was asking my team, am I kind of missing it? Like, I don't feel like we have a really bad staff retainment issue, because I think the big issue for us is that we do have so many part-time positions, and our Parks Department, Parks, Recreation, Neighbor Services has this issue as well. And the fact is, a lot of times people start in a part-time position when you're a student, or, you know, eventually you want a full-time position, or you graduate from school and then you move into a different field, right? So we have natural turnover. We don't have a huge vacancy problem. But But again, it is our goal to always keep our positions filled. And we are thinking about whether in this budget proposal, we should build in almost like a vacancy filler, so that in recognition of the fact that, well, you're always going to have, with a large staff like ours, some percentage of vacancy rate. So we could definitely have that conversation with the budget office about whether that's a way to help ensure that we're always fully staffed for our hours. And also just being really mindful that we're asking for enough staff. You know, we've always said we're not going to add hours without more staff. But to that point, like, we always want to make sure that there's enough. I don't want to talk too much, but I did want to say one more thing about this process, because the commission will be involved. At the end of this month, we are starting the data analysis process for the hours, which was required by the city council when they gave us the funding to do this expansion, which they called a pilot. And our intent is to really understand how busy not only Sunday, but really all the days across the week. And we're so lucky to have such a great data unit that we're going to have really robust data for the first time on a location and hourly basis. So that I think that will also help us understand where better to allocate staff time. So I think it also gets to your question a little bit, is that with the resources we have, how can we best allocate staff time to ensure that we always have enough staff at the right times?
Absolutely. And the expansion of hours. I guess that's what I was worried about when we're talking about expansion of hours. You can't do it without staff.
Right.
And so that's great. I love it. That's an excellent, fabulous answer. And anything I can do to help, happy to. All right. Any others? Thank you again. We really appreciate it. I'm sure we'll be back as we move through the budget process for the city. The next item.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you remind us of where we're at with the budget subcommittee?
We're actually scheduled to meet again tomorrow, and then next week, Thursday.
Okay, so that's moving along. Great, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item C, again, an informational item, library if I could say it again, library collections. We would really appreciate Sharon giving us the update.
As Sharon comes on, I will just introduce you. Some of you know Sharon from last year. She is a fabulous, incredible librarian. And, you know, there are certain brand of librarian that just totally understands this aspect of our work that is collection development. It is, there is a factory quality to it. There's a super analytical quality. And also, as the manager, she keeps all of this stuff going and ensuring that our communities have the resources that they need and the knowledge resources to access. So I'm excited for you to hear Sharon's report and answer any questions that you have about this, what I think is one of the coolest aspects of our services. Sharon?
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, commissioners. I'm happy to be here this evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about the acquisitions budget, highlight some changes in how customers use our collections and how we acquire them, how we make decisions about our acquisitions budget, ebook demand and offering customer choice, collection work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a few exciting projects. Our acquisitions budget has remained about flat over the last several years, while our nearby libraries have seen more growth. Acquisitions makes up only 7% of our total library budget this fiscal year, leaving us behind our peers. Expenditures were 13% in San Francisco, 16% at Santa Clara County, and 14% in Sacramento in 2021. Having the same budget year over year means that we can buy less. Costs go up for processing and taxes and the materials themselves. And so with that in mind, the total allocated acquisitions budget is $5,512,000. The parcel tax provides 8% of this budget, and the construction and conveyance tax provides the bulk at 92%. The acquisitions budget pays for physical materials, ebooks and e-audiobooks, electronic resources, processing costs, and sales use taxes. How we allocate these funds is largely based in how our materials are used, and that is represented by our circulation. The total circulation for last fiscal year is over 6.9 million. That's an increase from 55% from fiscal year 2021. Some interesting updates in our circulation are that the overall percentage of e-materials circulation went down from 36% in 2021 to 19% in 21-22, despite an increase in e-audio circulation. But this is mostly due to an increase in the circulation of physical materials, most notably children's picture books, children's fiction, and easy readers, because our buildings are open. So not only is the whole pie representing our circulation 55% bigger this year, the big pieces of last year's pie are a little bit smaller, and the smaller pieces of last year's pie are a little bit bigger. Next slide, please. In addition to circulation, we make decisions about how to allocate acquisitions funds by looking at several factors: the turnover rate, cost per item, some fixed costs, as well as input from several sources. Results in the acquisitions budget document you see a small portion of here. So what are each of these factors? The turnover rate is the number of items divided by the number of circulations. Lucky Day DVDs had an impressive turnover rate of 21.8 due to the changing checkout period from 3 weeks to 7 days. Children's graphic novels had a turnover rate of 9.3 last fiscal year, which is 3 times higher than in 2021. This means that on average, every item in the collection circulated over 9 times. The cost per item, which can range from just a few dollars for a children's paperback to more than $100 for an adult reference item, helps determine how much money is needed to meet demand. Overall, for the acquisitions budget, there's input coming from city priorities, ELT and strategic priorities for the library, the collection development advisory team, staff survey, and selectors input. All of these priorities, along with numbers-driven data around circulation and cost per item, drive our decisions on how to allocate our acquisitions budget. There are slight changes year to year that help build the story around what is needed most in our communities. Technical services and collection development strive to provide our customers with what they most want and need to enrich lifelong learning and services for all ages. Next slide, please. As our buildings opened more fully and customers began returning for physical materials, changes to the budget and solutions for how we acquire materials have been needed. In response to building closures due to the pandemic, the periodicals budget was reduced by 85%. After we reopened, due to customer demand for access to the daily San Jose Mercury News and popular magazines, $90,000 was approved to add back into the budget for periodicals this fiscal year for a total allocation of $120,000. This is still just a portion of what was spent 5 years ago. However, despite spending less, we've taken this opportunity to select periodicals with high levels of community interest and are seeing circulation higher so far in the first 6 months of this fiscal year than in the 9 months our buildings were open in fiscal year 1920. We've worked hard to keep as many popular world language titles as possible, and 40% of our total periodicals collection is in a language other than English. These world language periodicals have increased in cost significantly. Some titles have increased as much as 117% since last year for an annual subscription. Next slide, please. World language materials of all kinds are increasingly difficult to obtain, whether that is due to recent supply chain interruptions, changing habits of how people access books and media, or simply lack of physically published content depends greatly on which language the materials are in and in which country those materials are published. We made some shifts in spending this year. The allocation for Vietnamese media collections was reduced because physical media is not being produced and is largely unavailable to libraries in the United States. And the allocation for Japanese children's books went up because the circulation increased by almost 73%. The world languages budget makes up 7.7% of the total acquisitions budget and is higher than circulation might warrant. World language materials often cost more and are harder to acquire than English language materials, necessarily requiring additional funding. But we are not waiting for demand to determine that these collections are an investment in the reflection of our communities. We know that adding funds to world language collection makes a difference in our circulation numbers. In 2017, a funding proposal was accepted and an additional $125,000 was spent to enhance and refresh our then aging Spanish language collection. Circulation increased by 34% for Spanish adult materials the next fiscal year as those materials arrived. And by fiscal year 1920, Spanish children's materials circulation increased by 24%. To keep our Spanish language collections updated, we had the great privilege of attending the International Book Fair in Guadalajara this year. This supported an opportunity to reestablish relationships with vendors and gather information to better inform our selectors on how to acquire materials in the future. And we got some great Spanish language materials using mostly contingency funds from the budget. Next slide, please. World language e-materials are becoming increasingly available from new and popular platforms, and we continue to seek those out. You can see on this slide that overall expenditures for ebooks, that's the green line there, have decreased somewhat despite continued high levels of demand, as some funds were reallocated to physical collections. Funds were approved to continue focus on cost per circulation titles and simultaneous use titles to provide instant access to ebooks and e-audiobooks. Next slide, please. Many e-audio collections were also made always available over the last year, continuing instant access to a larger catalog of e-audiobooks. And no e-audio collection circulation went down this year. Every age level and category increased its usage. In 3 years, circulation of e-audio has more than doubled. Prices have also increased rapidly. Expenditures for e-audio materials are high because the cost of each license we purchase is extraordinary. Of note, this fiscal year, a brand new Stephen King e-audiobook cost $129 for the library to license 1 copy for 2 years. There are about 120 holds on 15 copies right now, meaning that we've spent almost $2,000 on this one title alone and still can't meet customer demand or our standard 5-to-1 hold ratio. However, the world of e-materials is large, and we provide access to a wide variety of resources for our customers to explore. Next slide, please. Our most popular collections are on Overdrive, mostly through the Libby app, in Hoopla and Access 360. The Cloud Library is our eLucky Day collection, so if you need that most popular ebook and don't want to wait on Overdrive, try the Cloud Library. The Palace app is new and building momentum as an app that aggregates all of our ebooks into one simple app. Next slide, please. Additionally, we have e-materials that include local authors, library writing contests like the graphic novel making contest, more academic focused collections, and technology focused collections. All these different sources are included in the circulation count for ebooks and e-audiobooks, and offer our customers broad choice in how they access e-materials. Next slide, please. In addition to keeping up with ebook demand, technical services staff continues supporting SJ Access by adding devices and hotspots to the catalog, converting hotspots from school district to circulating filtered hotspots, and updating records to get access to these items where it is most needed. Each of these thousands of items went through the hands of technical services staff to create opportunities for connection for those who need it. Next slide, please. In other exciting work, in June of 2021, ebooks were made available to the passengers at San Jose International Airport through a Wi-Fi connection in a device called the Pop-up Library. No library card needed. And despite unforeseen technical difficulties and challenges to gaining physical access to the Wi-Fi devices when restarts were needed, the one functioning device saw incredible usage. Innovating from these challenges, our vendor is now offering a new way to access this ebook collection for airport passengers by simply scanning a QR code with their mobile devices. In coordination with marketing and the airport, the library will be offering the simpler ePop-up library very, very soon. Next slide, please. We've continued to make connections and expand access to ebooks by creating a link between school districts' Sora ebook collections and the public library's Overdrive collection. Overdrive launched the Sora app to schools in September 2018. This allowed students to find their closest public library collection, but they needed a library card to check out materials. Starting in June 2020, a more seamless integration between school collections and the public library collection was established, allowing students to check out materials using their school credentials as well. With 5 agreements between Overdrive and different school districts currently in place, we've expanded the school's ebook collections and made it easy for students to check out public library ebooks. And students at any school with Sora can still access the public library collection with their SJPL library card by linking their Sora account to the public library. Over the last 29 months, since the implementation of the first agreement, checkouts from Sora make up 8.2% of our total children's and teen circulation. And last academic school year saw a total circulation of over 35,000. There is an expected growth in these connections with potential schools and school districts to include Alum Rock School District, the Oak Grove School District, Notre Dame High School, and Yerba Buena High School. Next slide, please. Collection development works in several ways to ensure that students and our entire community have access to a vast array of ideas and information, and actively promotes diversity, equity, and inclusion in our day-to-day work. We use the Collection HQ DEI analysis tool, shown here in part, which analyzes our collection based on book industry standards and communications, commonly called BISAC subject headings, encompassing DEI topics. All the DEI topics that are analyzed are listed on the right side of the slide. One of the most valuable things we can do is make sure the diversity of our collection is always increasing. We can do this by tracking the percentage change over time. A lot is possible with this tool, including removing titles with DEI topic BISAC subject headings that are not truly representative. This tool is new and dynamic. It's always improving. It helps us ensure that our collection's diversity is moving in the right direction and can be used to identify materials that meet certain needs or specific areas where we might be lacking in materials. To some degree, we are limited by what is published in the first place. So there are no universally accepted standards for what amount of diverse material a collection should have. However, Through conversations with other local libraries, we have learned that our holdings percentages are on par with our peers. Next slide, please. And like many of our peers, we are creating diverse book lists. The Staff Picks team, led by collection development staff, continues to focus on creating lists that celebrate specific cultural origins and also work on making sure that our regular book lists feature voices of all kinds. So that if you click on the 4th grade book list, for example, you'll see a variety of voices reflected in both the authors and characters of those books. We also offer staff training. Last year, Collection Development gave a training for librarians about how to critically read older texts for problematic content. This helps staff gain awareness about how materials they may have nostalgia for may include problematic content. Staff are encouraged to promote newer books by authors with diverse backgrounds and can use resources like Collection HQ's DEI tool to help identify titles. We're currently working on expanding this training to all staff in 2023. Next slide, please. Cataloging is also actively involved in DEI work and using inclusive subject headings, adding new updated subject headings and changing problematic ones to replace outdated terminology. This is important because subject headings are used to find materials of interest in our catalog. Outdated terminology can limit what our customers find when searching if they aren't using those older terms, and they can make people feel excluded. In the past year, 2 new subject headings have been updated to more inclusive language. Over 1,800 records were updated. New catalog records from vendors are continually checked for these terms and updated. In 2023, 3 more subject headings will have inclusive language added. Next slide, please. As part of our ongoing effort to support local authors and illustrators, the San Jose Public Library continues to offer free access to self-publishing platforms such as Pressbooks, Short Edition, and Biblioboards. In addition to our traditional annual programs, such as the Graphic Novel Making Contest, Spring Poetry Contest, and Local Lit, our local author showcase in partnership with San Jose State University, which celebrated its 10th anniversary in December, the library debuted our first ever Fall into Fiction contest and received 62 original works of short fiction that were published through our short edition collections. The Graphic Novel Making Contest received 214 submissions from 223 local creators and had an overall program attendance, including skill building workshops, book discussions, and the annual awards ceremony of more than 1,000 individuals, while this year's Spring into Poetry contest netted 77 original submissions across all age groups. Next slide, please. SJPL's short edition dispensers, used to print an original 1, 3, or 5-minute long story, are currently only available at 2 library branches, but 2022 saw the overall usage of both devices nearly double, with 1,945 stories printed by library users at both locations. Additionally, the online short edition portal, used to read stories and poems digitally, was accessed nearly 5,000 times in 2022, an overall increase in usage of over 500% from calendar year 2021. Next slide, please. And as always, it has been a busy year and we've accomplished many things. We have implemented the Chinese ebook platform HiRead with new and popular ebooks, increased our periodicals holdings, and updated subject headings with inclusive language. Upcoming for collection development and technical services this fiscal year, we are anticipating building a small, youth-focused Braille collection to support families, We also plan to expand our youth large print collections to offer additional materials in this accessible format. We are actively working to add perpetual rights to the daily San Jose Mercury News historical archive from Newsbank that is only possible through a generous anonymous donation. And we are on the search for streaming video platforms to meet customers where they already are, with a focus on world language content that is increasingly difficult to access in physical formats. Thank you for your time this evening. I am available for any questions you might have.
Amazing. I see that we have 2 participants with their hands raised, so I think we'll get ready for our timer. And Cassie, I'm going to turn it over to you as soon as we get our timer up.
Okay, and we do have one raised hand. Paul Soto, go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. The library is still disrespectfully lacking in the use of language. Chicanos exist, C-I-C-H-I-C-A-N-O, Chicano. The word exists, it's in the dictionary, and there is a large class of people in this city that put the 3 most powerful civil rights movements on the map in United States history in the 20th century. The Lowriders movement, the Farm Workers movement, and the Chicano movement. When the students walked out of San Jose State's commencement in 1968, walked across the street to Bud Winterfield and shamed and mocked and humiliated the shameful fact that while we were 22% of the population at that time, we only represented 0.1% of the student body at San Jose State University. And it's called the Chicano commencement, not the Hispanic commencement, not the Latino commencement. We'll get there though. We will get there. I will help you because we're going to start using the word Chicano. We're going to start using the word Chicano when it comes to voices. We're not Hispanic. It's just as disrespectful to call me a Hispanic or call my people Latino when Cesar Chavez himself referenced himself as a Chicano. He referenced himself as a Chicano. And so my question is, while you think you know something about racial equity when it comes to language, you know absolutely nothing because you still continue to disrespect my community and disrespect me as a human being by calling me a Hispanic or a Latino. Soy Chicano, ¿qué?
And that was the only public comment.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Kelly, and Commissioner Allen in that order. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Hey, it was such a great presentation. And as you started, I was thinking in my mind, I'm wondering how well we're preparing for the California Department of Education's Global 2030 plan. And when you went into all the global documents and all the languages, I was just so impressed and proud of this library and what you're doing is just amazing. Thank you for looking to add in Braille books as this is a small cohort of people, but they are hungry for literature and other people's experiences, just like everyone else. And their way of connecting is through touch. And I know those books are a little more expensive, but boy, is it worth it to that community. And I'm really intrigued by the how often these books are being circulated and can estimate the cost per circulation. I think that just puts a nod to our data team, and I'm really proud of you guys. Thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I see we've added Commissioner Zisser, so we'll have Commissioner Kelly, Allen, and Zisser. Commissioner Kelly.
Yes, thank you. Wow, what a presentation. I've never seen anything like that before. I really appreciate it. I would like to ask you this couple of questions. I come from a large branch store retail background, where each individual store asks for those items that are selling better than another product, or does the library work the same way where the branches can call in and say, this is what I need, this is what people are selling, this is what would work in my branch? So I'll wait for an answer to that one first.
Yeah. Sharon, do you want to talk about how you work centrally with all the branches to engage them and their unique local needs?
Of course. We do have a system-wide collection. A large portion of our collection floats between locations, which allows for our staff to, especially for those floating collections, get things from other branches without ever needing to talk to collection development. But when our staff do have a specific need, whether that's for a special program or something that they've noticed in their community, they talk to our collection development department, which orders materials for all of our locations. There's several ways they can do that, through our purchase request form, which is the same form that our customers use, or through staff meetings or direct emails or phone calls. There's always constant communication between branches and the central collection development team.
So are you finding that system is used a lot? That all branches are calling and say, hey, look, I need this, but I don't need that. Is that happening?
It does happen every year. We have a 2-year collection review cycle, and sometimes because of that, every collection in the library is reviewed at least once every 2 years. And it is usually at that time when branch staff indicate to collection development, we notice that there's a lot of materials that aren't circulating in this collection, but these 2 or 3 titles need more in our location. We do have a lot of communication between branch staff and collection development.
One of the reasons I asked that question is that I spend a lot of time at the Bascom Library, at least 1 day a week, perhaps 2 or 3 days a week. And we find that young adult in the general reading area and in the book nook doesn't sell at all. And I should say people don't take it out to read. The same thing at the book sales, same thing happens. Young adult is a very poor readership in Bascom. And I'm sure some of the other libraries would have similar things to talk about. Children's books, for example, can't keep them on the shelves. Can't keep them in the nook either. So I'm glad to see that you're spending a lot of dollars on children's books, because that's a real critical need. And as indicated in some of the conversations in foreign language as well. The other thing I had to ask was, you were talking about Vietnamese collections being difficult to get in terms of media.
That's right.
And we get lots of that donated, and it's generally tossed because there's no market for it. And I know that when other branches when other friends groups are communicating with one another, the same thing is mentioned. Can anybody take this Vietnamese material? Nobody can take the load that we have getting. So I don't know if that's going to be able to help you with it. So if those things should be submitted to you for approval to use, that might be some way to broaden that assortment of goods. Same thing to a lesser degree with Chinese language. Tons and tons of material come in donations in Chinese. There's really not a heck of a lot that we can do with it. And I've got some other questions, but if you wouldn't mind, I'll talk with you offline about that at some other time.
Of course.
Is that okay? Good. Thank you.
Commissioner, you're saying at the Bascom branch, that's where you have the donations?
No, well, yeah, that's where I spend most of my time, but I do work with the All Friends group, and I get the conversations that go between branches when they say, hey, I've got all of these Italian books, what can I do with them? Hey, I've got all these French books, what can I do with them? Hey, I've got all this Vietnamese material, what can I do with it? That's the reason I bring it up.
Yeah. So we can do, that's what I was wondering. We can do 2 things. We can follow up with the Bascom branch. And then also, I know that there's a planning for an upcoming All Friends. So maybe we can figure out a way to have that discussion there.
And I can say too that the Collection Development Advisory Team is building a list of community organizations that will or will not accept materials in other languages. So it's not complete yet, but we have started that work.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. I see we've added Commissioner Reyes, so we'll go Commissioner Allen, Commissioner Zisser, Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner Allen.
All right. Sharon, that was a fabulous report. And again, very easy to understand. I wanted to find out, is SORA an acronym? And if so, for what do the letters stand?
SORA is not an acronym. It is the name of the product from Overdrive for school districts.
Okay, that's great. And the other thing I noticed was the mental and emotional health collection seems to be the only category that decreased. It didn't decrease by much, but I just wondered if there was a reason why, or if that was just the way things go.
It is probably partially just the way things go. There's a couple of things that have happened in that collection DEI analysis tool. And one of them is that they sort of change the subject headings that they use. They sort of tweak them along the way, and that can change our percentages. And I mentioned the collection review list. So it could be that there were a lot of older materials that weren't circulating anymore that were discarded, and we haven't had a chance to build that collection back yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Zisser.
Thanks. I love the presentation. It's just a reminder of just the breadth of what the library has here, and part of it is the function of being a large system. And I don't think Link Plus was mentioned, but I've benefited enormously lately from Link Plus, and that really expands the access further, relationships with other libraries. Can find some obscure stuff that I love. I do have some questions, all focused on DEI, and I have to be honest, I stepped out momentarily to say goodnight to my son, so I might have missed a couple of these things, so forgive me if you already went through it. Can you just remind, I remember when we did this discussion last year, and again, you may have said this, but there was a definition of DEI. I just wanted to make sure I understand when you talk about the DEI collection, what that means.
So specifically for Collection HQ, the diversity, equity, and inclusion analysis tool that they have built analyzes the collection through the BISAC subject headings. That titles are given either mostly from the publisher. Those BISAC subject headings are granted. Sometimes we add local subject headings if it is of a topic of interest, but that DEI tool is only analyzing those subject headings.
So not author or characters of color, for example, unless there's a subject heading that has to do with, say, there's a book about, having pride in one's culture, that would count, but just having a Black character or a Black author won't necessarily count, correct?
That's right. We do have some control over that and can add subject headings, and we can also, in the same way we can subtract them, we can also add them.
Yeah, it's so hard to read much into the DEI statistics, and I guess I'm curious if there's sort of a different metric for like representation, because it's probably even, I don't want to put it's at least as important just to have representation, even if the book's not talking about the culture or the background or the race explicitly. Just a child seeing him or herself represented on the page, makes a difference, for example. And I know my branch of the library and other branches do an amazing job of really featuring, represent a lot of representation and lifting those books up and making them easier to find. And that and that's obviously not represented here either. And I just think there's maybe those percentages look low, but I don't have like a baseline to know, well, is 2% a lot or not a lot compared to other places or what have you. Whereas, you know, if we knew that, you know, 12% of you know, books had you know, significant Black representation, you know, that would be a more helpful statistic because we know what the demographics of our country are. Anyway, I don't know if there's a way to deal with that or not, but I don't find these statistics very useful. I'll be honest. It just doesn't tell me anything without a comparison to other libraries or sort of a baseline from the researcher to say, hey, here's what the goal should be.
So one thing, Commissioner Sharon did say in the presentation that she's done outreach this year to understand where San Jose is with all the other libraries that utilize this tool, and found that we're very comparable in terms of the percentage. But to your point, maybe there's a way in the future presentations when we're looking at those percentages. So for us, they mean something because we understand. If you think about, and you're right, it is talking about subject headings, and this is from the perspective of our collection of something that's searchable about topics that people want to learn and know about, right?
Yeah.
So that's the part of that collection. Maybe there is another way to get at representation, and that's a good thing for us to think about. But from the subject heading standpoint, there are so many subjects in our collection of 2 million items, right? That 2% is actually can be kind of sizable, right? So maybe what we can do is give you a better sense of how those percentages fit within the larger collection and what that actually translates into the number of items, if that would be helpful.
And I would also, thanks for that clarification too. It would also be interesting to see sort of the breakdown for like children's books, for example, which, may have a certain significance. Couple other quick questions. I'll try to make them quick. The audio book, and it's incredibly helpful to hear about how costly it is to get those licenses. It's a little bit intimidating, actually. Have you sort of done a DEI analysis on audiobook usage? Particularly I'm thinking of older people or people with disabilities who that may be their only way to access literature. And it'd be interesting to see, what percentage of an older population compared to other populations is using audiobooks. And that might influence how willing we were to invest, in those and buy the popular books, the Stephen Kings and so forth. So yeah, I'm curious about whether there's any demographic information in that regard.
There is likely to be in the future. The reality is, as you know, we don't track what individual users check out, but we are able to look by age group, right? And so until this past year, the San Jose Library has always just had a children's group, a teen group, and then all adults. And so actually this past year, in our effort to create a senior library card, we created a separate group, which that means we will now be able to see circulation by that group, which I think could be useful in a number of ways.
Yeah, that seems like it would be really useful for in a number of ways, including the audiobook thing. I take your point about helpful reminder about the demographics, but I know you can analyze by branch and you can look at which branches, are serving more typically underserved populations and so forth. But on this question, I was more interested in the age and because, I'm coming up on needing reading glasses finally. So I'm more sympathetic to the challenges folks have. So the last question is, this is such a basic question. And maybe I should know this. When you're talking about the license for 2 years for that book, two questions. One, is that typical of the, was that the ebook or the audiobook? That was the audiobook. Is that typical, or is that because it's Stephen King? And then secondly, how does that compare to a physical book? Do you just pay what everyone else pays for a physical book? Or is there some cost that I'm not aware of?
I
We
can
do.
try answering, Sharon, if you want,
Oh, sure.
or you can go ahead. I was just going to say, I think that was a point we were trying to make, is that for physical books, we actually get discounts, and as libraries typically. And so it's been a challenge for libraries, the whole situation. But Sharon, that was an extreme case, right? But it hasn't been very easy for us to get licenses.
It is an extreme case, but it is more and more frequent that those e-audiobooks are very expensive. And the licensing changes by publisher. So each publisher has its own. There are some groups of licensing that the 2 years, there's 1 year, there's 26 checkouts. Sometimes it's as much as your customer can use it within a year or within 2 years.
Got it. Yeah, that's really unfortunate how expensive it is. Again, it would be interesting to know sort of who's using it and anyway, that was it. I so appreciate the information and the thoughtfulness about just expanding and making these collections more meaningful to people and accessible to people. So thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Zisser, and we have added Commissioner Thorson. So Commissioner Reyes, you're next, and then Commissioner Thorson.
Oh, yes. So thank you so much for everything what you're doing to support our library, that I can see, for the 3 years, the progress despite the pandemic, but everybody working hard, especially our staff working to reach out more students and for all the accomplishment that you do. But actually, one of my question, I think somebody asked already question that what I observe and of the birth of the presentation today, that we're talking a lot about different languages, but I'm not sure if I missed it earlier. I don't remember it mentioned about bilingual, because I knew right now most of people or students or children I heard, they're not only speaking one language. So I'm not sure if we have more books that multilingual or bilingual, because I think we're in San Jose, we have a diverse group of people here. So I'm not sure it's the included part of our goal or focus for this year, because I know last year we already accomplished some language, like you said, the Chinese one. And then the other question is, I don't even remember too that we have more books that focusing included people with disability. So especially for the young children. So I think those two things that I observed. So maybe if we have something that we can include, or if maybe you have already a plan about it.
So I'm sorry, Commissioner, my whole family just came home and my dogs are going crazy. So was the first question is about the bilingual collections, or what we
the
call
bilingual collection? Yes.
So Sharon was noting that has been a focus over several years. And one of the things that we found is that when we've been able to invest, like there was 1 year that actually a council member worked with us to allocate additional funding specifically for a refresh of our Spanish language collections, for instance. And what we saw was in the subsequent years, a significant increase in utilization of those collections. So that's something that Sharon and her team is always looking at, and which collections there is more availability. Luckily, we do have more access to Spanish language materials. She mentioned the team got to go to the Guadalajara Book Festival, which is the international festival for Spanish language materials. And so that was wonderful. And we're able to see what's out there. Some of the languages are harder to come by. So we're always open to feedback as well, and always open to suggestions for any language materials.
Thank you.
I think the second question our commissioner had was around books that show inclusion or special, inclusion with children in particular, and how our collections are faring in that way.
And I think that so it's interesting because with fiction titles, a lot of times if subject headings aren't specific to, every type of topic that we're looking for, that is the goal, especially for, parents and educators looking for children's materials for their children. But also that's where our staff works really hard to provide what, the classic book list, but we call it like resource lists that are available online. We work with teachers and educators and parents to ensure that there are recommended reading lists that are, if you find them online, they're linked to the catalog on every topic you could possibly want. And if there's a topic that we don't have, we'll develop it. So I'd love to hear more from you if there are specific areas that you're thinking of, and we can make sure that we're like advertising those more, making them more present and more visible and discoverable to our users.
Thank you, Commissioner Reyes. Commissioner Thorson.
Thanks so much for the presentation. I wanted to share that last year I'd worked on a project with some data from the University of Wisconsin Cooperative Children's Book Center. They compiled diversity statistics from the past few years, so 2018 to 2023, and it's really nice because they not only do subject matter, but also primary and secondary characters and author and illustrator and compilers. So that was a neat data set to work with. Tangentially, as I was working with books that were published in 2022, not even trying, found that, oh, I've read this with my daughter because we checked it out from the library countless times. So just wanted to share that a lot of the books are already in the library's collection, at least from the year 2022, which was what I was working with. So thank you to you and your team for all the great work you're doing.
That's great.
That actually reminded me too that we didn't hit on it as much, but a lot of the selectors that Sharon works with, they utilize tools like that to make selections. And we're always looking at all the experts in the publishing field and the academic field and others to recommend the best titles to add to our collection. But like I said, we're always open to others.
That's amazing. Thank you. I love those stories when it happens on the subject we're talking about. I'm like, oh yeah, that happened when I was there. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you as the last comments. I just thought maybe that staff had any clarification they wanted around the subject headings in our report, considering our public comment.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Wendy. I did want to clarify one thing. So there were two different slides that talked specifically about terminology that's used in the catalog and how Sharon's team's working hard to ensure that we're removing outdated and offensive language and replacing it with new language that is hopefully more inclusive. So two things. One is that there was one slide that had a number of categories on it, and those were specifically the subject headings that are included in the tool that is utilized from Collection HQ, the BISAC subject headings. And so that was one list of terminology. And the other slide, though, did include the terminology around the Hispanic community and Latino community. But that is not an all-inclusive slide. It was really a sampling of subjects that have been updated. The catalog does include the keyword subject heading for Chicanos in several different, iterations. And so we're always open to update, new information and feedback about that. But I did want to just note that is already in our collection. And so it isn't exclusive. It wasn't an exclusive list. It was a sampling to show some of the changes that have been made. So thank you for asking for clarification.
Absolutely. All right. I think as I look around the room, that's it. Wow, Sharon, thank you so much. This was just a really robust conversation, and I really appreciate you hanging in there with us going through all the data sets. It was really great. Thank you. So it's usually my chair announcements, but I'm going to defer to Council Member Ms. Torres. Welcome and congratulations. We're so happy you're joining us at our very robust and fun Library and Education Commission. If you have any words of encouragement or things that are going on that you'd like to share, that would be fabulous.
No, great. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It is truly an honor to be the council liaison, the official council liaison to the Library and Education Commission. So thank you for that. We all know that libraries are the lifeline of our neighborhoods and in our city. Right, we know that education is the grand equalizer to many of our under-resourced communities, right? And that goes a lot because I won't be able to sit on the dais of the San Jose City Council if it wasn't for my local library. So I participated, I read books, I was a youth participant, you name it. I volunteered at the Biblioteca Latinoamericana when I was growing up, when it was actually just a small little closet next to Sacred Heart Church in the Washington neighborhood. And so I clearly remember the amazing library staff that was in that biblioteca, and I know that many of our staff stepped up to the plate during COVID-19, as you can see. You didn't stop working when the pandemic began, and you continue to work, and you continue to provide services, and you continue to provide safety for our residents. So thank you so much, and thank you to the commissioners for serving. Like I said, I am honored to be a liaison for this commission. I want to remain committed in making sure that our libraries are fully funded, that we have enough staff, that we have resources of all languages for our youth, our unhoused community, our seniors, our families, right? And it shouldn't matter if you are checking out a book in the Biblioteca Latinoamericana or getting resources at the Willow Glen branch, or are attending one of our many amazing programs at the East San Jose branch, the Roberto Cruz Library. Everyone deserves to have access to their public library, and I'm committed to being an ally and being a close partner. You can't see her here, but my staffer. I'm always used to working for somebody, so it's weird being the boss. My staffer here is Esmeralda, and so, but I will leave our District 3 email, and of course my District 3 cell phone. So for anybody who wants to get in touch with us, but I am committed to making sure that you are successful, our libraries are successful, our staffers at our libraries are successful, our director and our commissioners as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure as you ramp up, we're going to have lots of conversations, especially going through the budget cycle, because we spent a lot of time thinking about that. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your staff being here when you cannot. All right, we're moving on now to the library director's announcements.
Oh, thank you. So happy New Year to everyone. Toward the end of last year, the San Jose Public Library's Career Online High School program celebrated our 150th graduate. To date, actually, we've already graduated 3 more, so we have 153 Career Online High School graduates who've earned their high school diploma and career certificate, and we currently have 30 more students enrolled in the program. As you know, we thank the support from the California State Library and the San Jose Public Library Foundation for more than 240 scholarships that have been awarded to students to cover the full cost of the program. So if you're good at math, you noticed that that means we have more scholarships available. Career Island High School is open to any adult who lives in San Jose and who does not have their high school diploma. If you have any questions or know somebody you'd like to refer to the program, please visit sjpl.org/COHS. Next, everyone is invited to participate in our San Jose Public Library Winter Reading Program anytime now, between now and the end of this month. Notably, nearly 2,500 people have signed up for this year's winter reading, having logged more than 5,400 books read and 818,000 minutes read since January 1st. San Jose Library's winter reading program continues through January 1st. And all you have to do is register online and head to your nearest library location to receive a registration prize. Complete the program for a chance to win a fun and exciting grand prize. And there will be 5 total grand prizes awarded. Winners will be announced on February 1st. So register today at sjpl.org/winter. And then looking ahead to February in celebration of Black History Month, San Jose Public Library staff have published a series of personal and factual Black History Month related blogs, which are on our website. You can find those at sjpl.org/Black History. Also, the Biblioteca Latinoamericana branch library will offer a take-home family craft program starting February 1st through February 11th while supplies last. And in addition, there will be an adapted version of the playbook Sitting Down for Dr. King performed at the Hillview Branch Library on February 5th at 2 p.m. And for a complete list of events, please visit sjpl.org/events. That we are very excited to be back this year, and that concludes my announcements.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jill. We really appreciate it. So we're moving on to our section for comments and announcements. I'm wondering if our folks have any friends, groups, announcements, or updates from our commissioners. Commissioner Kelly.
Surprise, surprise. The first thing of interest, which is really exciting, is that we're going to be having our first All Friends Meet of the year. And that's going to happen on January 28th, 9:30 to noon. Going to be hosted at the Cambrian Library. And we've got 12 responses from the various Friends groups so far, working diligently to get all of the Friends group to come. And I know we're going to have special guests from administration and perhaps some other folks who are interested in what the library is doing. So our last Friends meeting was July of last year, and then there was nothing in between. So working with Jean, we're going to revitalize that program and get some really good information that's coming up. The second thing is that it's really incredible how time flies. On February 25th, we're going to be celebrating the 10th anniversary of the opening of Bascom Library. And I know that Trina is working very hard on that. The Friends group is supporting that. We're going to be providing financial support for it. And we're anticipating about 100 attendees. We'll have a book sale the same day, lots of entertainment and food and wonderful things. So please remember to come out and say hello at Bascom and say happy birthday, February 25th. That is it for that part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, meetings attended by commissioners as commissioners. Are there any commissioners that would like to report out?
I made a presentation to the District 9 Leadership Group last week about what the Library Commission is and what the library program is doing. Very well received. They're excited to hear from another representative for District 9 at their meetings.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Kelly. All right, moving on, seeing no commissioner hands raised, to San Jose's Public Library Foundation board meeting update from Commissioner Thorson.
Hi, everyone. So the San Jose Public Library Foundation has a few open positions. So wanted to share those with you in case you know of anyone who might be interested. They're looking for an individual major gifts officer at the moment who will be responsible for working with individual and family foundation donors, as well as an advocacy and media relations manager who will work on educating and advocating with local and state stakeholders. And then additionally, looking for Resilience Corps associates. So anyone who is interested in gaining experience in the expanded learning field, so that's after school, summer, and intersession learning programs, and working with students in K through 8. The position will support these expanded learning programs for the academic year of 2022-2023. So all of those are available on the SJPLF careers site. So please share widely if you know of anyone who might be interested. Also wanted to mention, while final numbers for the end of last year are not yet available, it was the most successful in SJPLF's history to date, which is really exciting. And much credit goes to library staff for their willingness to try new things with the foundation last year. Some of those new things were small gatherings of major donors at library branches to learn more about the needs and priorities at those specific branches. And then, of course, the foundation gala that was in October. And so coming up in 2023, those small gatherings will continue, and there will be a 3-part series highlighting how the foundation support engages, empowers, and educates city residents through the library. And also wanted to mention that the advocacy committee that's comprised of members of the Foundation, Commission, and Friends will be gearing up for the city's budget process. So meetings haven't been scheduled yet, but stay tuned for more information as we work to restore library funds for this budget cycle. And that's everything I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're so grateful for your liaising across on our behalf. Just to remind everyone, if you're looking for upcoming opportunities for participation, you can go on our website. And now is the time to ask commissioners if they have any suggestions they'd like staff to consider for upcoming meetings. Commissioner Kelly.
Yeah, thank you. I've suggested this several times, both last year and this year, and I noticed it came up in the budget thing too. And I really would like us to talk about security at the various branches, mainly what kind of training these people have, what they're expected to do, and who's supervising them.
Thank you, Commissioner Kelly.
You bet.
All right, moving on. We are, there is a typo on our agenda. Our next regularly scheduled meeting will be held virtually February 15th at 7 p.m. I'm adjourning the meeting at 8:54 p.m. Thank you, everybody.